Hey, it's Mike here, and today my response to the recent vegan versus meat eater middle ground episode on Jubilee. They have 10 million subscribers. The episode is over 500,000 views, and this is a situation where they get people with conflicting views and have them talk to each other, and it can get a little bit tense, can be a little bit hard to watch. And in this case, they had 4 vegans and 4 people that ate meat. Really, 2 of them, I think, fully carnivore. They had Steak and Butter Gal, a carnivore YouTuber who I have responded to in the past, especially about her insanely high LDL or bad cholesterol and blood work, etc. They also have somebody that eats a raw meat diet as well as a hunter. And then on the other side, they have Victoria Washington, who's a vegan bodybuilder. Also Zoe Rooster, who I know her as from Instagram, who rescues animals and has an ankle monitor because of it, and a couple other vegans. And there are some wild claims that are made, and at times it gets a little hectic.
They don't have a brain, but they still feel the pain.
They react to stimuli in their environment, but they're not being taken away from their family.
In your vegan diet, what foods do you eat in a typical day?
Families.
And a lot of my response is going to be to Steak and Butter Gal, although I'll cover a lot of other points. There was so much, it was over an hour long. But Steak and Butter Gal is an ex-vegan, and so she was going really hard into like her health challenges on a vegan diet, but she had a lot of things that were directly contradicting what she was claiming. Simple example was that she straight up said that she didn't eat dairy in that video, but it's so obvious in and around when that was filmed, before and after, that she is consuming dairy. So just things like that. But let's get right into it. And I will say, I made the stupid mistake of just responding to the thing in its entirety. I did over a 2-hour video, and I even edited studies and all that over it, only to realize the obvious, that it wouldn't be monetized because I showed so much of their footage. So I have that for free over on my Patreon if you want to check that out. And the first thing I did notice about the video is that they really have a lot of the meat side talking in the beginning. For example, 2 of the 4 vegans haven't even really spoken by 8 minutes into the video, which is probably beyond the average watch time. And then they also give Steak and Butter Gal really the first 2 minutes for her to just completely poo-poo on veganism. Anyway, here she is.
I've been on a carnivore diet of eating only animal foods for the past 6 years. I was also vegan for 6 years, right before I went carnivore. So when I was vegan, I actually lost my period. So I was no longer fertile. I had extreme skin issues, psoriasis, cystic acne. I had also mental health issues.
So this really is that rehearsed rant I've heard from her about how bad her vegan experience was. It sells really well on her carnivore channel. And these are anecdotal claims, which, we have anecdotes on the other side in these areas of people improving the situation on a vegan diet, and even in some cases studies. Well, here's an anecdote on somebody getting rid of severe psoriasis by going vegan. And then just in the area of periods, for example, from this study, people put on a vegan diet improved their period pain, for example, and there was no indication that everyone was losing their period. That, I will say, this is a situation where, if women don't have enough energy, their bodies signal that they don't have enough resources to reproduce, and that is very likely what I think happened here.
I used to be a classical pianist, and I studied at Juilliard for 2 years. Yeah, so I just remember going on stage, and I couldn't remember the pieces that I was supposed to perform. And I was panicking. I was like, what is going on with my memory? Why can't I focus in the practice room? And why am I feeling so nervous and anxious right before stepping out?
This is funny because I remember too much on my vegan diet. What was she eating? Give me some tips. And she goes on about having anxiety and not being able to remember her music with all this brain fog. And I'll just say, we have beef-funded studies on vegetarians showing that depression is higher. But when you actually look at vegan specifically from the study out of Australia, we see that anxiety and depression scores were lowest in the vegans. And in terms of memory, well, I am talking about older people here. We have this gentleman who was interviewed on Vegan Linked talking about how he just couldn't remember sections of his life, entire trips, etc. But then after shifting to a whole food vegan diet, he was then able to remember everything that happened in his life after switching his diet. And then we also have, more specifically, one of the people who was on Ornish's Alzheimer's trial that put people on a plant-based diet, talking about how he couldn't remember his band music, and then shifting to a plant-based diet was able to remember everything again, literally crying tears of joy.
Because I had a hard time remembering, I'd get confused about different tunes. It was not a pleasant experience.
And here he is after he did that just 20-week trial on a whole food vegan diet and lifestyle changes.
I played for 2 hours. I just stood there and played. What are you feeling now? Joy?
But there is one downside. He now has to remember everything that happened at BAM camp. And we have the situation where she's really defensive about how she didn't do a vegan diet wrong. And Tori Washington, the vegan bodybuilder, is like granting her, oh, I'm not saying you did a vegan diet wrong.
6 years, you did it, you tried it. But now, 6 years you're doing carnivore, oh, it works so well.
Yeah, for you to discredit my own experience
Yeah, but that's
with
your
my
own experience,
vegan
right?
diet.
You can't just
6 years of
assume
vegan
that
diet.
eating
So
animals
are you
is...
saying that I did it wrong?
No, I'm not saying you did it wrong.
Right.
That's your own personal
And that's why I said
experience.
it, because
Exactly.
this is my...
But I'm gonna go ahead and straight up say that she did do a vegan diet wrong, and there are several points contributing to this. But with Bella, Steak and Butter Gal, there's definitely an issue that's hiding somewhere deeper in the video that she admits to, and I'm so happy she admitted to this because, first of all, it's completely contradictory, and here's what she says.
I can't have children if I don't have a period, so I became infertile. And do you know what the vegan community told me? That's fine. That's actually a sign of health, and that's totally normal. So I admit that there was a lot of misinformation and brainwashing going on for myself, and I'm speaking for myself.
So yeah, she says that she didn't do a vegan diet wrong, but then straight up admits to following all these pseudoscientific misinformation sources that losing your period is purity, things like that, which to me are heavily associated with that raw vegan movement back in, no, I guess she was vegan from 12 to 6 years ago, which would be, 2012 to 2018 roughly, which, yeah, the YouTube raw scene was out there. There were a lot of claims being made. I actually started my YouTube channel during that period because I was seeing so many pseudoscientific claims and no one was citing science in the vegan sphere. A couple more points here that support her limited diet was that she says that she never even ate tofu or tempeh the whole time that she was vegan.
I did not eat a single processed mock meat junk food that they label vegan.
Tofu, seitan, and tempeh aren't processed mock
Fine,
meat.
I didn't try those either. But when I ate whole foods plant-based, I felt hungry all the time. So maybe it just didn't work for me.
And this makes me really concerned that she had a highly restrictive diet, was she even including legumes? Either way, there are several lines of evidence that she was likely not eating enough calories, that would lead to low energy, being in a starvation state that might give her more anxiety, not having enough energy to think clearly, not having enough energy to have your period, etc. And then one final thing about why I seriously believe she did a vegan diet wrong is that from the blood test video I responded to, where her LDL was 260 on her carnivore diet, which is like over 2.5 times the cutoff for optimal LDL, bad cholesterol. And of course, high LDL is causally linked to atherosclerosis from Mendelian or genetically randomized studies, the best that we have. But then she has a carnivore doctor on saying, oh, your numbers are great, they're beautiful. But one thing you'll notice is that her B12 was just down at 200, 150 is considered low. So you have to be really not doing the main thing that vegans are told to do, which is to get a reliable source of B12, whether it's through fortified foods or supplements. Simple example, with not religious sort of spotty B12 supplementation, should have been better about it probably. My B12 last I checked was 675, which is higher than the average meat eater, which is something that we are seeing from newer studies where like the vegans are outperforming the meat eaters, like from this German study, for example. And why am I confident that she was not taking B12 in any meaningful way? Well, we have a study like this one where they gave people just 50 micrograms of B12. Most supplements are 1,000 or more. And every person that had low levels in that study went into the normal range from that insanely low amount of B12. And again, she admitted to listening to misinformation, so who knows what B12 claim she was following. Maybe she wasn't taking it because she thought that her liver would just indefinitely create it, or that she would get it from like her fingernail. I don't know what she thought. But where I would say she really loses all credibility is when she's challenged on the idea of, hey, well, you're consuming breast milk from a cow. And she goes, oh no, I don't eat dairy.
And tofu is healthy for you?
Yeah, it's processed
so many
soybeans.
GMOs. It's
Tofu,
not good for you.
That's not true. Tofu is a staple in plenty of Asian cultures. It's been around
I'm
for
Asian.
thousands of years.
It's not good for your health.
Organic tofu is good
It
for your
really
health.
ruins your hormones.
That is a
true.
myth. The type of estrogen that is in tofu is completely different from human estrogen, and it's ironic for you to say that when you're drinking breast milk from cows.
Okay, firstly, you don't know what I'm eating in my carnivore diet. I don't drink breast milk from cows. I actually
milk from any
do not
animal.
eat dairy right now because it inflames me.
But credit to Lifting Vegan Logic on Instagram, who went and dug up the details, and it appears that they filmed this on October 12th of this year, and he went through her videos, and during October, before the filming date, you can see her consuming dairy products, even drinking some dairy products. She said all dairy products, maybe she was confused about drinking or not, but yeah, very clearly eating dairy over and over and over again. She also says that tofu ruins your hormones when study after study shows that it has no effect on actual human blood hormone levels. Actually, it is just associated with lower cancer, breast cancer, and now modestly prostate cancer from a very recent study. And the last thing I'll say about her health in particular is, again, that it's just frustrating throughout the whole video. A lot of times they're covering ethical topics, like most of the sections in there are ethical, which makes sense. Veganism is an ethical stance. But she'll just always say, well, it was either my own health or the animals, so I'm basically exempt from any of these like ethical questions here.
And I had to face, is it going to be my health or is it going to save the animals no matter what?
At some point you have to decide, is it worth sacrificing my health for a religious ideology?
I'm fully healthy.
But having admitted that she was following a bunch of misinformation when she was a vegan, like clearly she could have maybe gone to, you know, a plant-based health professional, maybe looked at some health issues and tried to change a couple things, or eaten a balanced diet, gotten enough calories, actually got a source of B12, things like that. It probably would have looked a lot different. I personally don't think that her health would be compromised. Vegans on average are healthier. They have lower disease rates, whether it's cancer or diabetes, etc. And of course, lower LDL, which is perhaps the main driver for a leading killer. And hers is through the roof currently. So I believe her long-term risk of our leading killer is higher than it would be, but she doesn't seem to care or believe that. And we're about to get to this raw meat woman, but I will just say also at one point, Bella claims that, oh, people are helping their autoimmune diseases on a carnivore diet.
So you actually mentioned healing from autoimmune issues. The carnivore diet and eating only meats is actually renowned for reversing autoimmune issues. And this whole community stay with this diet because they're finally, for the first time in their life, getting healthy again.
She's talking about all these anecdotes. She actually says, go into the carnivore community and just spend hours looking at what people are saying about how great they're doing. And it's like, well, are you not seeing all of the negative forum posts? Like, the carnivore dieters are not all right, even in terms of rheumatoid arthritis, which is an autoimmune disease. We have a bunch of people saying, hey, I was sort of promised that my autoimmune disease was going to go away, but it didn't. And, you know, that's perhaps evidenced by this study, which found that high red meat intake was associated with 2 or 3 times the risk of rheumatoid arthritis, depending on the model that they used. And then add on top of that the scurvy that I've covered in the past and the 6-month bouts of diarrhea, as well as just like smelling so much like putrid meat that it causes some professional and social issues.
Called type 1 diabetes. And
okay. There's a lot of people that have actually managed type 1 diabetes by eating only meat.
I understand that you can manage it.
Yes, no, I recognize
but I just want to make sure that it's clear it's incurable and people shouldn't, you know, go off life-saving medication to try to.
But a lot of people have.
I know a lot of people have
because
gone
they can.
Yeah. Not for my disease.
Understood.
It's impossible. No one with my disease can do that. So I just want to make sure that that's clear so we're not spreading something that's potentially dangerous.
How loosely are you going to use the term managing there? It's just very clear they go down to a 0-carb diet, thinking that they're getting their insulin sensitivity better, but they're eating so much saturated fat that, you know, having that be causal to insulin resistance means that if they ever want to try to eat carbs again, it's going to be an absolute nightmare. When you can contrast that to like Robbie of Mastering Diabetes, who is managing type 1 diabetes and coaches people how they can actually eat like a normal balanced diet that includes carbohydrates, whole healthy ones. Okay, now onto the raw meat woman who, she was like, I eat a raw meat diet, and I've literally like gasped when she said that, because I'm like, I can't believe people are still doing this. It is so dangerous.
So I'm a raw meat eater, meaning I only eat raw animal products.
If you raise an animal, you gave them a name, say it's a baby pig, you raise them from a baby, could you slit that 6-month-old pig's throat?
Yes.
You could do that.
I could do that.
Honestly.
You know, whether we're talking about infectious diseases like bacteria, or we're talking about straight up parasites, this is the worst thing you could do. I mean, we've had Sverige, YouTuber, who was eating a raw meat diet, who got a life-threatening Campylobacter infection from raw meat that left him like losing control of his limbs for a certain period of time.
For whatever reason, I got this bacteria called Campylobacter enteritis something. People usually don't get this, is that my muscles stopped working. And it took me a month now to actually get fully recovered from it. I couldn't really open the door. I actually talked to a trainer, and she said that many people got completely paralyzed from it, and some people even die from it.
We also have, as I've covered in the past, like a couple ate some raw marmot and died from the literal bubonic plague, and then later we also had a teenager die from the plague from eating raw marmot as well. Not something we want to do. It's also very likely that RFK got his brainworm, which is really going to be a pork tapeworm larval cyst in his brain, from being exposed somewhere down the chain to raw meat. You know, whether it was a cook that was handling raw meat and then got a tapeworm, and then the larva gets pooped out by them and then they get fecal matter on their hands, or RFK is just completely insane when it comes to like dead animals. He picked up a dead bear cub off the road and drove it into New York City. He allegedly put a whale head on the roof of his car. He's just, for whatever reason, loves to eat weird dead animals or touch weird dead animals. So who knows how he got the brainworm. But yeah, as this chart shows, our top 10 most deadly foodborne pathogens are traced directly to meat sources. And this is just from handling raw meat, not even from eating it. So if we shifted to eating raw meat, the amount of infectious diseases would just rise very rapidly. Now we have a couple points that I want to hit on. We have a hunter there who's, you know, basically painting it as, oh, hunting is such a good solution. I hunt for all my meat, which means, yeah, he kills all of his own animals.
As coming from a hunting and conservation background, and also in ag, yeah, you'll definitely learn where the denser protein comes from and the higher quality protein.
Thankfully, the protein conversation stopped there, probably because of Torrey Washington's arms once he sat down.
I personally have been, for the last 7 or so years, but basically my whole life, I've fed my family off of almost 100% wild game of some type, whether it be deer or elk or pigs or ducks. You definitely have a closer feel to what you're consuming when you have full control over it.
And I just wanted to respond that while this is romanticized, it is absolutely not a solution for our food system, especially. I mean, we can look to this Our World and Data chart. Just in terms of mammals alone, if we were trying to replace all of the meat that we eat from mammals, simple math shows that we would hunt every single wild land animal to extinction within about 2 weeks, which is insane, you know, if we were logistically capable of extracting that same amount of meat per weight that we're currently eating. And this is where I want to say the vegans did have really good responses. I don't have time to put them in there. I'm obviously just trying to rebut the crazy responses. But for example, in response to the claim that if we stopped eating all these animals, like they would suffer from being in the wild, which is like the obvious response is, hey, we breed all of these animals, technically 80 billion land animals, into existence each year. And then to say that if we stopped eating them, they would suffer is like actually insane. But when we're the ones that cause that, they also, of course, have to bring up the plants feel pain thing.
Try to cause them as little harm as possible.
Yeah, plants feel pain too. So
Torrey Washington's face here, just, it needs to be memeized. And this just sort of descended into chaos. I heard some good points sort of shouted of like, you know, plants don't have a central nervous system, blah, blah, blah. But I would just go on to say, like, there's no evidence that plants have a state of consciousness that allows them to suffer. They also don't have an evolutionary reason to be suffering. They respond to stimuli, but very clearly animals do have that. And once again, I wholeheartedly believe that these people making that argument have absolutely zero care about plant suffering or really believe in it at all. Like if you just start stabbing a leaf, like they're not going to be like, oh my God, you know? And then another huge section of the video was just talking about whether veganism is a privilege or not. And the vegans did a really good job responding to that.
A block of tofu has 90 calories to 10 grams of protein, costs $1.75, and there's 5 servings of that in each block that costs $1.75. And the cheapest groceries throughout history have been rice and beans, which are both full of nutrients.
But one claim, again, Bella, Steak and Butter Girl, just made another claim where I was just like, really? Are you really telling the truth? And she just straight up says that her grocery bills were more expensive when she was vegan than her fully carnivore, fully meat-based diet.
I'm just saying that my carnivore diet grocery bills are absolutely cheaper than my vegan diet grocery bills.
And this is where I did get the vibe that like nobody agreed with her. Even one of the guys on the meat side, who seemed to be pretty open to the vegan message, was, you know, talking about how plant foods are cheaper, and we're talking about these staples of the poorest people in the world are eating these like grains and legumes, and yet she's saying, oh no, my straight up largely steak and like specialized raw dairy diet is cheaper. I absolutely call BS on that, and a recent randomized trial comparing a vegan diet to a Mediterranean diet did a sort of second follow-up study where they looked at the food cost, and the vegan diet was 20% cheaper than both the Mediterranean or the standard diet they started with, and that was like a healthier vegan diet. So yeah, cheaper. And finally, in terms of privilege, like killing animals and eating them is like the ultimate privilege over animals. The hunter was like, that's not what privilege is. And it was like, that's not what you want privilege to be. Sorry. Anyway, in the end, perhaps the biggest takeaway from this is that a massive carnivore YouTuber out there, Steak and Butter Gal, straight up makes all these claims about how a vegan diet failed her. But here we've started to pull the veil back a little bit and realize that, as she admitted, she was following a bunch of misinformation. She had wild beliefs about a vegan diet, was very likely not eating enough food, was not eating a balanced diet, was not seeking out the help of any professionals. Yet, under a carnivore context, she has doctors onto her show to then just tell her that her 260 LDL is fine. But yeah, her claim that she didn't eat dairy, like, I would love to see her actually respond to this, because, I mean, she was caught absolutely red-handed eating dairy before and after filming that, and it's just dishonest. Or there's another explanation. I would love for there to be one, but a lot of times it's Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is the real one. Sorry, the dogs are going crazy. Why I have to say this in what is coming up on 2025, but please do not eat raw meat. It is very dangerous for infectious diseases. We're talking about Campylobacter, E. coli, Salmonella. I don't want to bring back the plague, please. Again, if everybody hunted, we would just kill all wild animals. Like, even if we reduced our meat consumption by like 75%, if they were trying to get it all from hunted wild animals, total species extinction, and meat consumption is already the leading cause of species extinction from just farming and habitat destruction, etc. So yeah, let me know down below what you think about all this, if there are any points in there that I missed. And while I will say I probably didn't miss them on my 2-hour video, which I posted on my Patreon, if you want to become a contributor, you're welcome to watch that. Otherwise, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.